Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why I am a believer in doing full resets on rep work on the deadlifts. Apparently, not everyone agrees with this, and that's okay. This is my position. It's a position I've held a very long time, and I've found it to be extremely successful for me personally. And I will also note that in spite of doing some pretty heavy rep work, I have not sustained injuries or muscle pulls or things like that while doing heavy rep work on the deadlift. And I believe that that is largely due to the fact that I do full resets. And again, we come over to that point of it is more difficult. Yes, if you don't uh, maintain tension and do soft touch and go type reps and things, you cannot do as many reps. You just simply can't. And that isn't a failing in any way. In fact, the only environment in which that would be a negative would be, let's say you're competing in strongman specifically, but they're not doing raw deadlifts in those events. Those who are chasing the most performance, they're strapped up. Figure eight straps are usually using deadlift suits because they're allowed to do so. And in that context, that's a little bit different. But when we're talking about actual strength building, we're talking about muscle building, we're talking about carrying over to a raw max in which you're not going to be able to use straps. Your grip's going to have to be there. You're going to have to pull from a dead stop with no stretch reflex. It makes sense to train that way. And so if you look at what I'm doing, that's exactly what I'm doing. I am doing a full reset, making sure I'm re-pulling slack out of the bar and restarting every rep as if it was a 1 rep max. Okay. Some things to think about there. Most of the injuries I've seen on rep work on deadlifts over the years have usually involved people bouncing, right? As they start to get fatigued, the people who try to maintain that tension or just do a soft touch and go, oftentimes you'll see them make the mistake and they'll do bounce reps. Okay, I have seen over the years, this is where I've seen back injuries occur. I've even seen bicep tears, bicep ruptures occur this way. Now, the bicep ruptures are not going to be there if you're strapped up with a pronated grip. So you could remove that there, but when you're pulling raw, I have absolutely seen this happen. And I've seen it happen. So it's a concern. But we come over to back injuries, back strains. This is almost always where you see them on deadlifts or for the people who are doing touch and goes. Occasionally I'll see one on a strapped up max, and I have seen that occasionally in my own clients who are pulling very, very big weights. You know, again, people who are very strong, you do see this happen, and I've seen it happen on singles when strapped up. Rarely do you see it happen when someone is completely raw and then having to pull the slack out and do it on that. But then when you come over to the rep work itself, this is where I've seen the back injuries occur. People who are not doing the full resets. And I'm not saying that correlation is always causation. I'm saying this has been my N=1 observation with over 2 decades of observing people over the years deadlifting, my own coaching, my own lifting, many, many years in gyms observing people. This is where I see the injuries occur. It's just been my firsthand experience. Can I prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that, hey, this is where the injuries only occur and it never occurs, for people who resets? Of course not. But it's certainly been my observation. This is where I've seen it happen over and over and over. So again, I want to state I'm not saying that that's conclusive. I'm saying it's my observation. But we come over to the other point. I don't think that there's a benefit to the other, right? When people say, yeah, okay, but you're losing reps, I can do more total work. But why are you able to do more total work? Because it's easier? Okay, that we could apply the same logic to bench press and saying, well, you can do more total reps if you bounce and go or you touch and go than if you pause. You're losing strength. Yeah, but it's also giving you a better training response because you're having to do more work at the hardest position, right? You're having to sometimes restart or re-engage from dead stops when the muscles are at the lengthened position. It's harder. But that also elicits a larger training response. So in this case, it's, yes, you might be able to do more tonnage because it's taking you longer to reach muscular fatigue. Okay? But what are we looking for a training response? We're looking for that fatigue to occur. Okay, and we're looking for that fatigue to occur at lengthened positions if we're talking the hypertrophic side. Right? That's what we're looking for. That's desirable. That's what we want to see. Okay, when we're shortchanging that process, what's happening? Well, we're getting a reduced training response, but we're then moving more tonnage with less training response. Well, again, we want to talk about overall fatigue and recovery. Which one's going to be harder to recover from potentially? Well, the other, because then we're dealing with more axial loading. You know, let's say you're doing 500 pounds, but you fatigue at 12 reps instead of, 6 reps, 7 reps because of the resets. Well, that's more total axial loading that you're going to have to recover from, but you may not be getting a larger training response. Just because you did more reps with a given weight when you're at a given strength level doesn't mean you produced a more desirable training response. You simply found a way to cheat to fatigue less rep per rep. Okay? But when we are training, we're not outperforming, right? When we're training, there's no benefit to that. You're not eliciting a larger training response in the gym. Okay? Any more than, when you put knee reps on or a slingshot or whatever, and you're like, well, I could do more reps with the same weight. Well, of course you could because it was easier. Okay? This is not desirable. There's no benefit. Now, we could say, well, if recovery is equal, maybe it wouldn't matter. But when we're coming over to, again, no benefit, it's just a personal preference. And I get that if someone is going to, train specifically for an AMREP event, all right, to where you're allowed to do it that way, I mean, I understand there's certainly some truth and some intelligence to training the way that you're going to compete. But that is, again, a sports-specific thing that you're doing. You're training specifically for an event to practice the technique and the abilities involved with doing that event. It's not necessarily going to make you stronger. And so that's what we're talking about here. So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about overall muscle building, overall strength, better recovery, lower chance of injury. I think you're better off resetting. Again, up until the point where you're training for something very, very sport specific. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.